Historically speaking, when we take a look at the Cadillac brand, it's really all been about the luxury sedans of the 50s, 60s, 70s, I think even the 80s and 90s, which was a bit before my time. But in the 2020s, it's all about crossovers and SUVs, and Cadillac has been able to transition almost seamlessly to being a crossover dominant manufacturer with the Escalade, the XT4, XT5, and really the more recent arrival with the XT6. Now, this vehicle has been on my radar for quite some time because when it came out in 2020, I think a lot of people were wondering, how does it fit in the lineup? It's a three-row crossover. It does slot beneath the Escalade, but it's a bit more luxurious than the XT5. And finally, I'm getting an opportunity to do a full, thorough review of one. And in this video, we're going to take a deep dive into the XT6, see how it compares to other three-row crossovers in this market, and also see why, if you're looking to upgrade from an XT4 or XT5, maybe the XT6 might be a great decision. Now, before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Colonial Cadillac of Woburn in Woburn, Massachusetts for allowing me to do this review. The link will be in the description below so you can check out their extensive Cadillac inventory. Also, before we get started, make sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you're notified every time a new video goes live on the channel. And so, without wasting any further time, let's get right in this review. The Cadillac Escalade has been that one vehicle over the last 20 plus years that's kept the brand as a status symbol here in the US, as you'll have a difficult time finding anything better in the segment. But with that came the demand for a slightly more affordable alternative, a crossover that could still offer the utility and versatility with 3 rows, while also being a step above the XT5. In a price range and market that's mostly dominated by non-German luxury manufacturers, Cadillac is putting their own twist on the 3-row crossover segment with the XT6. And while there's a list of competitors vying for the top spot, the XT6 might surprise you if you're in need of a luxury family vehicle. Starting off with pricing, the model we're taking a look at today is the Sport, which comes in at just under $62,000. And is the top trim for 2023. Because of the Escalade's grand and upscale persona, the XT6 is held to a very high standard, often being compared to vehicles that aren't necessarily direct competitors, like the Audi Q7 and BMW X7. However, if you've been considering the Acura MDX, Infiniti QX60, or Volvo XC90, Cadillac's 3-row crossover is very competitive in terms of exterior dimensions, as it outsizes all 3 when it pertains to length, which does have a profound effect on interior space and overall practicality. The full paint finish sets the tone for the XT6's place in the market, as a ground clearance of 7 inches likely isn't enough to inspire confidence to go off-road, and as we'll discover, the softer suspension better suits those looking for an opulent driving experience. Where the XT6 does garner a bit of attention is with the exterior design, as it doesn't share any resemblance to the XT4 or XT5, and in fact follows similar styling cues as the sedans in the lineup, such as the CT4 and CT5. This crossover was also the appetizer before the refreshed Escalade arrived, and there's no denying that it's a classy and sophisticated crossover to appeal to those who've liked the Escalade's looks, but not the pricing. With the Sport, the mesh grille with a subtle brushed aluminum strip that connects into the main headlights continues Cadillac's push away from integrating chrome into their front fascias. But the highlight of this vehicle has to be the LED light setup, where the DRLs and turn signals are separated from the main housings, giving the XT6 an almost car-like road presence despite its size and shape. Moving over to the side profile, the Sport will be sitting on 20-inch, 12-spoke diamond-cut alloy wheels with dark Android satin finish pockets. And exclusive for this trim is Brembo Performance brakes that add a nice color contrast, but also improve capabilities for this crossover when on a spirited drive. While the Sport does have active dampers, we test drove a premium luxury, and we feel ride quality is more than sufficient for this market, especially when compared to the stiffer ride we had experienced with the Infiniti QX60. You'll have body color side mirrors, with turn signal indicators, to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. Then coming around to the back, the XT6 is arguably the most aesthetically pleasing crossover in the lineup, and a lot of that can be attributed to the traditional roofline for a vehicle in this segment. But much like we saw up front, the LED taillight design is closer in appearance to what we've seen from the CT4 and CT5, where it suits the personality of this vehicle, while the contrasting accent that runs the width of the liftgate provides classier undertones. To cap off the final third, dual exhaust outlets do provide some sense of athleticism to the XT6. Under the hood, you'll find a 3.6-liter V6 engine for the premium luxury and sport, which produces 310 horsepower and 271 pound-feet of torque, and is paired with a 9-speed automatic transmission. Much like others in this segment, the XT6, even with the larger powertrain, isn't going to be a brute beast in a straight line, and certainly doesn't share any on-road characteristics with the Escalade. Yet, this crossover is capable of getting up to 60 miles per hour in under 7 seconds, which is par for the course in this segment. The XT6 is agile and quick enough to pass slower drivers and change lanes safely, but also with the V6, it can get out of its own way where the size and weight shouldn't play a factor when accelerating. For the drivetrain, the Sport is only available with all-wheel drive, but front-wheel drive will come standard for the luxury and premium luxury. And for fuel economy, you're looking at right around 20 miles per gallon in the city and 24 miles per gallon on the highway with the V6. Stepping inside on this model, we're greeted by maple sugar semi-aniline leather seats with chevron perforated inserts as part of the $3,800 Platinum package, which also includes a heated leather-wrapped steering wheel. Both the driver and front passenger will enjoy the heat and ventilation functionality for the front seats. And if you were to opt for the Sport, this upholstery is very premium and fits the luxury personality of the Cadillac brand. Not highlighted in the configurator is the suede headliner, which is something we weren't expecting on this model, and was a noticeable addition to the XT6 compared to the premium luxury we had test driven. In front of you is a head-up display, which is available on the premium luxury as well. And as you look down, between the analog gauges, there will be a digital display which showcases a good amount of information. And if you're upgrading from an XT5, you'll immediately recognize and will be familiar with the technology you'll be interacting with on a daily basis. If equipped, this display will also be home to your night vision for additional safety. Then moving over to the infotainment system, you'll have an 8-inch touchscreen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility to go along with onboard navigation. While you will have a row of buttons for the 3-zone climate control mounted below, there is a dedicated menu where you can access these same settings from the screen itself. More importantly, rather than having to reach to use this head unit, found on the center console will be a rotary dial and quick access buttons to conveniently help you navigate this user interface, which is rather simple and easy to get adapted to. With this XT6, we have a variety of camera angles, from a top view, side view for all 4 wheels, and front and rear backup cameras with trajectory, which we think is a must-have, as the XT6's size can be intimidating when parking or maneuvering this vehicle around in tight situations. Returning to the center console, to the right will be the drive mode selector and the traction control on and off button. And placed between the front seats is a wireless phone charging pad, which does keep your phone secure and out of sight. For the center storage compartment, there will be enough room for smaller items. And rounding out the front seating area, above will be a panoramic moonroof, which lets in a lot of natural light to the interior. Now moving on to the second row, we're going to start off on the passenger side. And this seat has been adjusted all the way back and is somewhat on a recline. And I have a good amount of legroom to work with here, which is a bit of a surprise. Now, keep in mind, I'm not the tallest person out there. I am around 5'5". However, if you're on the height of 5'8" or 5'9", you can join your family as a passenger on those longer road trips because you have plenty of headroom even with the massive panoramic moonroof, but also there's plenty of legroom and shoulder room as well. And I think the XT6 is a great upgrade over the XT5 just because of the room that you have here with this vehicle. It's definitely more family oriented and more conducive for a larger family. Also, of course, these second row seats are on rails. You can slide them forwards and backwards to give your third row passengers just a bit more room. But also, if you're just using this vehicle as a two-row crossover, you can at least slide them backwards to give your second row passengers more leg space as well if you do have taller passengers up front. Now, moving on to the center seat, there really isn't a center hump at all, and that's one of the reasons why I think you can't fit a third person back here, and also why the XT6 really is a 7-passenger vehicle. And again, you have a good amount of shoulder room as well, where I don't think it's going to be too claustrophobic or cramped for bigger passengers, and especially average-sized adults. But also, this is great to see if you do have smaller kids as well. Then on the driver's side, this seat is adjusted to someone of my height, around 5'5", and I have a lot of legroom here where I can just sit back, relax, enjoy the driving experience, but also the upholstery is very premium and high quality and provides a good amount of cushioning where you can probably just fall asleep back here on those longer drives. Also back here, you do have climate control to go along with 3-level heated outboard seats, a USB-C and USB input. Also, you will have another storage compartment back here for second row passengers, where you can fit a couple smartphones, maybe a small water bottle or two, and that's really great to see for a vehicle that's geared more towards families. And finally, to round out the second row seating area, you do get a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Now finally, taking a look at the third row, with the XT6, it is not a full-sized SUV like the Cadillac Escalade. So most likely, you're only going to have smaller kids in the third row seats because there really isn't that much legroom, but also this is very typical for most crossovers in this market. I will say though that when it comes to headroom, this is better than the Acura MDX, and this would be on par with the Volvo XC90. The fact that I'm able to sit back here and have enough room is pretty great to see. Now, I did slide the second row seats forward on those rails, and if the second row passengers do give me this amount of space, I could probably sit back here comfortably. However, with the third row seats being bolted to the floors, you are going to be sitting in more of a ball form if you are over the height of 5 feet, which again is pretty standard for most crossovers of this size. Also back here on both sides of the third row, you will have a USB-C input and also a cup holder. But ultimately, if you are using the XT6 to its full capabilities and you are going to have passengers in all 7 seats, I think you can definitely go on those road trips no problem. I think the XT6 is practical enough for most families. Now coming around to the back, you're going to receive a power liftgate. And inside, behind the third row seats, you're looking at right around 12.5 cubic feet of room, which is a bit smaller compared to what we see from the Volvo XC90 and others in this segment. However, I was able to fit 2 bags of camera gear, a gimbal box, and a tripod, which is rather impressive for a vehicle of this size. Some 3-row crossovers in this market aren't all that practical when it comes to the overall car capacity, especially what you have behind the third row seats, but at least you'll have the ability with the XT6 to go grocery shopping or run some errands, even if you have kids in the third row. Additionally, you will have a storage compartment on the left side for some smaller items, such as water bottles, car detail equipment, or maybe even a first aid kit. Also, you will have a storage compartment beneath the floor mat for some slightly bigger items. So that way, if you are going on a road trip with the family, maybe it's a day trip, you can have everything back here and have everyone join you on that trip and journey, especially since you can probably place some electronics back here since it is beneath the floor mat, so it is out of sight, but also you can have a couple bags as well. Then with the third row seats folded, you're looking at right around 43 cubic feet of room, which is actually one of the more spacious cargo areas we see in this market. I think you'll be able to fit probably 7 to 8 bags of luggage behind the second row seats, if not more. So if you are looking to upgrade from the XT5, the XT6 is a nice leap forward. What you're also going to notice too is that on the right side of the rear cargo area, you'll have a couple rows of buttons where you can automatically lower and raise the third row seats, giving this vehicle a lot of convenience, especially if you do have a family. The second row seats can also be folded automatically, but you will have to manually raise them. But with the second row seats folded, you're going to have right around 78 cubic feet of room, making the XT6 one of the more practical options in this price range and market when you compare it to an Acura MDX and also the Volvo XC90. And then once you're done, just press the button and the liftgate will close automatically. So we're now behind the wheel of the 2023 Cadillac XT6. Let's see how this vehicle compares to its rivals such as the Infiniti QX60, Volvo XC90, and also the Acura MDX. We're going to have an opportunity here to see what the acceleration is like with this vehicle. And of course it does have a V6 paired with a 9-speed automatic transmission. Not bad at all. Gets up to speed pretty quickly. And in situations where you want to get ahead of the driver next to you, you can definitely do so for sure. Now, of course, a 9-speed automatic transmission doesn't shift as crisply or as smoothly as what we see from the ZF8 speeds and some rivals, but I do think this would be on par with the Infiniti QX60, and I think because it has the 9-speed, it does shift a bit nicer than the 10-speed with the Acura MDX. Now, first and foremost, with this crossover, it feels very different compared to its sibling, the XT5, and it does have this luxury and more comfort-oriented demeanor compared to what we see from rivals. Cadillac is all about being premium, quality, and luxurious, and the XT6 is no different. When you go over the bumps and imperfections, you barely feel them. But as a result, because of the soft suspension, this crossover is not going to be dynamic in any way, shape, or form, even with the V6. You're not going to have the ability to take on sharper corners at higher speeds, but that's not what this vehicle's been designed to do. I know a lot of journalists do have a lot of criticism towards the XT6 because it doesn't have that on the edge of your seat experience. However, one thing I think a lot of buyers are going to love about this crossover is the fact that it is family friendly and family oriented. The amount of interior space that you have here is far better than the XT5, and it is a worthy upgrade over the XT5 because of how much shoulder room you have up front, but also the fact that you can have 3 people in the second row and have 2 additional smaller kids in the third row. And that's really huge for somebody who is on a stricter budget, who maybe can't go all out for the Escalade, or maybe doesn't even want to have an Escalade. And that's, I think, where the XT6 slot into place really nicely back in 2020 and even today in 2023. Now, you probably already have noticed that this is a different XT6 compared to the one that I was filming for the exterior and interior shots, and that's because that one was sold. That was a top trim sport and very well equipped. I mean, the interior materials that was used on that model, very impressive, very eye-opening, because I wasn't expecting that for Cadillac, especially in 2023, because we don't really look at Cadillac as being this brand that is on par with some of the European manufacturers. But honestly, compared to the Acura MDX and Infiniti QX60, I think it certainly is on par with them. Now, when it comes to overall vision, you do have a nice panoramic view. A-pillars are rather thin, so I don't think you need to worry about having a blind spot as you're approaching intersections. Also, when you take a look at your side mirrors, they are placed in a good spot. They're also decently sized as well, so I can see what's in my blind spots. And looking out back, the third row seats are folded, but I can see everything behind me, even with the second row headrests up. So you have a lot of vision to work with here, which is really great to see. Also, what I like too, which is a stark difference from the XT5, is that you sit pretty high up in this crossover. Your nice commanding feel and presence over the roadways, and that really adds to the safety that this vehicle is giving you. When it comes to sound deadening, you barely hear the outside world. Now, I am on back roads doing about 35-40 miles an hour, but honestly, this would be very comparable to what I've experienced from rivals in this price range. What is a bit of a surprise to me is that for a crossover that doesn't have a stiffer suspension and really isn't tuned to be a dynamic vehicle, the steering is rather heavy and does give you some feedback, which contrasts greatly from the XT5 that I reviewed last year at this time, but also even the Japanese manufacturers like the Acura MDX and Infiniti QX60. So if you are somebody that's looking for some exhilaration being behind the wheel, you're gonna love the XT6, because I think the V6 is giving you more than enough power, especially for a crossover of this weight and size, but also the handling does inspire some confidence when you are driving around town. As I'm making my way back to the dealership, I'm stuck at this red light once again, but that's given me the opportunity to see what the acceleration is like in sport mode. Now, when it comes to the interior layout of this vehicle, I think we really do need to see a full digital gauge cluster make its way on this model to better compete with rivals such as the MDX and also the Infiniti QX60. Not bad at all. The V6 does come to life, and it does give you some exhilaration there. Of course, it doesn't affect the steering at all. Steering doesn't get heavier. It doesn't get more agile either, but again, that's not what the XT6 is all about. I also like the brake feel as well, very responsive. And you don't need to really press on that brake pedal too aggressively to slow this vehicle down. See, in sport mode, I think the 9-speed automatic transmission responds very well and does seem very much like some of the rivals that we've seen so far, like the ZF 9-speed and the Infiniti QX60. But ultimately, when you take a look at what the Cadillac XT6 is all about, it's really just being a luxury vehicle all the time. And I think that's why so many journalists have negative things to say, because it's not like a BMW X7, it's not like an Audi SQ7, or even an Acura MDX. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing at all. This does seem very similar to what you'll experience with an Infiniti QX60 and Volvo XC90. In fact, I think the suspension would be very close to being on par with the XC90, which is very high praise. Also, when it comes to the interior quality, the seat comfort, but also the soft-touch materials found throughout, this does really exude a level of class and sophistication, and I think Cadillac has certainly done a great job with this vehicle. Now, when you do take a look at the sales figures, it's very competitive with the Lincoln Aviator, and I think a lot of it too, when you look at the 2022 and 2021 sales figures, it's all because of the car shortages. But I think this is a great vehicle if you are looking to upgrade and upsize from the XT5, because it's giving you a bit more than what the XT5 offers, such as that nice powerful engine, but also a vehicle that I think is a bit more conducive for a family, but also provides a great value proposition at the end of the day. So to wrap up my time with the 2023 Cadillac XT6, what are my final thoughts and takeaways for this 3-row crossover? I think it's more than just being an upsized version of the XT5, especially when you take a look at the interior quality with the leather stitched dashboard, the nice wood grain trim, which is a nice classy touch, but also the suede headliner as well. The way this vehicle has been designed, engineered, the way it drives and handles, it has this typical Cadillac feel. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It has this nice, classy, comfortable, and family-friendly demeanor that I think works very well for a 3-row crossover in this market. Because even though some people will say, well, it's not the sportiest, it's not the most aggressive, and it's also not a vehicle that's going to really draw your attention on the roadways, it is a vehicle that when you step inside, it has that premium feel to it that you're looking for, especially at around $60,000. And that's why I think that if you are looking to upgrade from the XT4 or XT5, take a look at the XT6. I think because of its interior spacing, the fact you do have a 3rd-row seat that is functional for smaller kids, but also the fact you have the nice safety systems and also even the technology as well, which, again, I would like to see a full digital gauge cluster like we see with the Escalade. I just think what the XT6 is offering at its price point of around $60,000 is more than enough for most buyers, especially people who are not looking to spend $80,000 or $90,000 like we see with the BMW X7 and also other European manufacturers. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram at Boston Autoblog so you can see what I'm up to and what vehicles I'll be featuring in the future. And I will see you guys next time.